All right, Liberty Expert Nation. I'm here with Mark Hughes. Mark Hughes is a comedian. He has a podcast, Pull the Trigger podcast.
Pulling the Trigger.
Pulling the Trigger podcast, because you like to pull the trigger, I noticed, on a lot of SJWs and just people in general. I mean, you were pulling the trigger on me last night. We went to a comedy show and
Neat.
Yeah, I think you might have triggered me a couple times.
Oh, cool. That's good.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
And I have a pretty, high threshold, and so you are really pushing the bounds.
I guess so. That's funny because, not necessarily ha-ha funny. I just joke about what I think is funny.
Yeah.
So it's like, interesting enough, the title for the podcast it's like a bunch of different things. So it's triggered, right? But it's also, because a lot of the guests I have aren't necessarily what I would call political. Some of them are just recovering addicts or like killers, or like I've had all kinds of people. So sometimes the pulling the triggers when they killed someone, sometimes the pulling the trigger is the pivotal moment in their life where they had to make a decision and change their life or something like that. Or the pivotal moment in their life where they fucked their life up and stuff like that. I can swear, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Libertarian, what am I talking about?
I really care.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, I've been on your podcast before.
Yeah.
I think you came into my consciousness when I saw a video of you in character. You play this character called Mark SJW Hughes, where you play an SJW, and you actually interviewed Jessica Yaniv, and I thought it was hilarious.
Well, I gotta clear something up. People always think Mark SJW Hughes and I are the same person.
Oh.
No, I just gotta dispel this right now. That he tries to get me canceled.
Right.
I don't know where the fuck he came, Z or whatever the fuck, came out of nowhere a few years ago trying to get my comedy shows canceled. That interview that he did with Jessica Yaniv, he broke into my podcast studio, occupied it, and now somehow made it so any money I make off of it, I have to redistribute to him and share with him, because he's a socialist, right? So,
right, of course,
yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, it's quite the performance piece, and you have to check it out. I'm going to put the link to that video in the show notes.
It's on the top of my YouTube channel too, if anyone wants.
Yeah, right. Well, if you're going to redistribute your wealth to him, you might as well promote.
I don't want to go to the gulag, you know what I mean?
No. So your podcast, how did you? Obviously, your backstory is, like most comedians, you have some kind of a degenerate history. It seems like there's a lot of dysfunction. It seems that inspires comedy. So tell me a little bit about your back history, because it's pretty.
So I'm a recovering heroin and cocaine addict. I've been clean next month, in just a couple of weeks if I can hold on, fingers crossed, I'll be clean and sober 14 years. And I started using drugs when I was about 13, IV, cocaine and heroin, 15, streets of the downtown east side. I don't know, probably most of you will be familiar with that. It's the most drug-infested part of Canada, and I was down there when I was a kid, started running away from home, stole to support my habit, in and out of jail, because I'd get caught, in and out, in and out, in and out. As happens with that lifestyle, more in jail than out, and when I was out, it was like fucking bad, right? Like just homeless, fucked up for days doing drugs. And then when I was about 21, I got sentenced to 8 years in prison, which later ended up I turned into a 9-year sentence because I got out briefly and was super institutionalized, and I robbed a bank to get sent back to the joint. And
you robbed the bank to get
sent back.
You wanted to go back. That's why you robbed the bank.
Yeah, I was because it had been my life for so long.
Right.
And it just life.
You felt more comfortable in jail.
Life was hard out here. I didn't. What happened was I got out very briefly, and about 5.5 years after that, getting sentenced to 8 years in that 8-year sentence, and I just thought, well, just don't do crime, and Bob's your uncle, and you integrate back in, and no big deal. It's like, holy fuck, being a civilian, a law-abiding citizen there's a lot of moving parts to it that I wasn't aware of. So I robbed the bank, got sent back, but what had happened was I changed my value system, even though it was hard to be back into society. I didn't want to be a criminal anymore. So once I ended up back in prison, I didn't want to be in prison anymore either.
Right.
And that was my pulling the trigger pivotal moment. I'm like, okay, I've got to change.
Was there a specific moment, or was it just kind of a
gradual? It was sort of just an evolution, a metamorphosis. So slow I can't remember, but I do remember once I was rearrested for the bank and the cell door slammed behind me. I went, fuck. That is not what. This isn't actually what I wanted to do either. I wanted relief. I wanted help. Right. And I just didn't know.
Right. And I'm guessing that's kind of what the heroin did, right? It was like relief.
That's exactly what it is. It all the trauma and shit and discomfort of life, heroin and cocaine took the edge off. Not even took the edge off, cured it temporarily. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I'm curious to go anywhere this conversation goes.
Yeah, by all means, man.
I really want to pick your brain about comedy and cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. But this is very interesting to me too.
Yeah.
What are some of the maybe misconceptions about addiction, and specifically like opiate addiction, that people should know about?
One is that it feels really fucking good. People don't sometimes are like, wow, it sounds like you're trying to sell people on it. It's like, I'm not, but I want to be honest about it too. People don't do it just shit for no reason, right? It feels really fucking good.
Yeah.
One interesting thing though is if you don't have if you're a pretty well-adjusted person, it would probably feel really good, but you're not. You probably wouldn't necessarily develop an addiction.
Right.
What are some misconceptions? It can happen to anyone. I don't know if that's a misconception anymore or not, though. I think most people are starting to realize this isn't just isolated to a certain group of people.
Right.
Socioeconomic factors do play a role, but they're not.
Right.
Opioids affect everyone.
What do you think the biggest driver of addiction is? Is it the substance itself? Like you try it a few times and you get hooked on it, or is it more like adverse childhood trauma or
a bit of both? It's a combination of things. That's why it's so hard to treat. It's they say the consensus is, and it's a consensus. It's not. There's still lots of disagreement and hostility. Like addiction, if you think government politics has hostility, vitriol, and contention, addiction medicine and mental health and addictions has a lot too, right? The different ways they should approach it. So the consensus is addiction is part genetic, hereditary stuff, part environmental. Right. So you could have two parents who both have in their DNA a history of anxiety, depression, mental illness, addiction. But if you were in a pretty stable, safe environment, it might not activate that.
Right.
Or you could be in a really fucked up, you'll see people who are siblings grow up in the same home, but only one of them was an addict. Right. But the household was abusive or something like that. So
Yeah, because some of the, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. His name's Dr. Carl. I can't remember. He's I think a neurobiologist or something. He's been on Joe Rogan a few times, but he describes it as, most people who try these hard drugs don't become addicts to them, but a percentage do, and so he said one of the misconceptions is that it's the substance itself driving the addiction. There has to be something else, right? And I think you hit on, and I think this is why probably there's so much contention, because what you're describing is actually a political division. Like liberals tend to look at everything as environmental, the environment makes the person. Conservatives look at everything as an individual, like you're almost like an island, an individual choice, and just say no kind of thing, right? Like it's simple, like just say no, make better choices, have some responsibility, and it seems to be, like you're saying, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a combination of things, right? And
just like everything in life, nothing's ever as simple as, and both of those traits or attributes that you just described about liberals and conservatives, the two things I hate about both groups.
Right.
So a lot of conservative friends of mine, a lot of them are religious, but not all. They're like, well, no, you just don't do that, and just get a job, and your uncle will give you a job. But it's like not everyone comes into the as all. I hate to say this because it almost sounds like a fucking SJW, but not everyone starts in life at the same place.
Right.
I think we have to admit that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But personal responsibility is a bit okay, let's just say, just for the sake of argument, I'm not responsible for my addiction. It's literally not my fault.
Right.
I'm responsible for my recovery.
Yes.
Let's say the environment did make me an addict. that same environment ain't gonna get me out of the addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
The addiction isn't your fault, but it's your responsibility in a sense, right?
and also what I do, what the addiction, what behaviors I will engage in because of the addiction, I'm also responsible for.
Right.
Even if it is a demon possessing me, making me do it, I have to exercise the demon. Once I know there's a demon that does this, now it's like, all right. Also, let's just say hyperbolic, but let's say addiction makes me batshit nuts and I'm not even responsible for my behavior. You shouldn't be responsible for all of my behavior either.
Right.
So if I rob,
Yeah.
even if I'm nuts,
Yeah,
you shouldn't be like, well, you know, he's sick. No,
well, my environment made me the way I am.
Yeah,
Like, if it's environment all the way down and there's no agency, then
Yeah.
how do we ever break the cycle, right?
So, and that's where on the liberal types can be like, especially in places like the West Coast, San Francisco, Seattle, LA, Vancouver, they're like, basically, they've gone so far with the soft bigotry of low expectations and it's everyone else's fault that, like, if I rob you and you complain, that's some form of racism or something like that.
Right.
I'm not even, and that's how fucking batshit they are, right?
Yeah.
And then conservatives can sometimes be extremely unsympathetic and uncompassionate and just be like, well, they're fucking wastes of skin, and it's like complicated.
Yeah.
Right?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Yeah, and I mean, you know, I've come to believe that this can only be solved at kind of the individual level in the sense that, you know, we can control the negative environment. I mean, we don't have to lock people in jail for doing, you know, activities that don't harm anyone but themselves.
Right.
You know, because obviously we know that like inflicting the same kind of trauma and the same kind of environment on people that might have contributed to the addiction to begin with probably isn't a helpful thing to do. So we can remove that, but we can't do a lot more than pull that negative environment away.
I have a funny, an interesting view on prison. It's not one I've ever really heard before from other people. So I think on the one hand, we have to be honest that prison is a traumatic thing. It's an extremely unnatural thing to do to someone, because locking up any animal fucks them up.
Yeah.
Any zoo animal is a bit fucked. Like, it's just animals, including us, because humans are animals, are not meant to be locked up.
Right.
Okay. However, we live in a society, and some people need to be locked up.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's one of these, we have to, something I wish.
But the people that need to be locked up are really
It's probably this percentage of people.
Well, and it's the ones that are harming others, right?
That's right.
And cage the animals that are harming other ones. Right?
Exactly. So
if they're doing self-destructive behavior, I mean.
So yeah, exactly. So someone ingesting drugs or engaging in prostitution, again, for the sake of argument, let's just say these are terrible things that people shouldn't be doing. Well, they are. They're not harming anyone. Now we could maybe. There is an argument to be made possibly about when some of these behaviors might be harming themselves so much. Maybe society does have to step in. Right. I don't know how far you go with that, but I know we might differ on this. But I think there has to be, in order for society to function, there has to be some base level agreement, a social contract, right? Like, okay, so we live in a democratic society where we kind of don't want society degenerating to a certain degree where people are shitting on the sidewalk and flailing in traffic. Okay, that's not socially acceptable behavior, right? So I guess if you went too far libertarian, you'd be like, well, not my problem, and if they get in front of my car, I can run them over, or whatever, right?
Right.
I don't know if that's necessarily the best society. So then, and some people don't like this, there might be a point where society might have to step in on the behalf of the individual for their own good. But where does it stop? Right?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, and you know, I definitely sympathize with your views. You know, I've argued with other libertarians who say, you know, for example, we believe that if you want to end your life, that's your right to do it, right? Like, at a certain point, maybe you have a chronic, like, terminal illness and you're suffering and you only have a few months to live anyways. I mean, who can argue with that? But then also as a paramedic, I see people who are having a mental health crisis. They lack capacity, right? They cannot see themselves outside of this thing. They are incapable of seeing things rationally and making decisions. In a sense, they're almost like children that need a custodian to intervene against their will in the moment, right? And I use, for example, like a hypoglycemic patient, okay?
Right.
Someone whose blood sugar is low, who is thrashing and fighting me, okay? I can restrain them, I can hold them down. I'm taking custody of this patient. My goal is to deliver them to a future state where they have full capacity again and they can make decisions for themselves again.
Right.
So I wrestle them down, I give them some sugar, they regain their capacity and they say thank you and I'm on my way. I think something similar could be made for addicts. Now, I would prefer this to happen at a more local level. I don't want a federal program because these giant one-size-fits-all programs are terrible. And in fact, I would prefer it to be family member or someone who's taking personal responsibility for taking custodianship. Like say someone's right off the rails, addict, say my brother goes off the rails. And I don't have any moral compunctions about locking him in a room and saying we're getting you off this stuff and I'm going to be here until you're off this stuff and rational again. At which point I'm letting you out of the room, but I'm going to give you all the love in the meantime. I'm going to give you all the support. I'm going to get you whatever you need to maintain you. But you know, so I think I can make a strong libertarian argument that is a moral thing to do. Certainly not unethical, and I would prefer it to happen, you know, again at the local level, preferably by family and that sort of thing.
Got to re-engineer society for all
Yeah,
this shit.
well, I mean,
because everyone wants to. I don't want to deal with it. Oh,
right,
it's a pain in the
yeah,
ass.
well, we've outsourced our personal responsibility to the state, right? If my neighbor is suffering, there's a government program for that. I don't have to go over there, and I don't feel any guilt about maybe I should bring him a meal or maybe I should help him get on his feet. So we've lost that sense of connection to our community, and I think in a lot of ways addiction is a lack of connection, right?
Absolutely,
and that lack of connection is growing. Well, it's fucking huge right now with COVID. I'm seeing so much mental health, substance abuse issues. As a paramedic right now, it's like off the charts.
And social media is being weaponized.
Yeah.
I believe it I fully believe. I don't give a shit if anyone thinks I'm being conspiratorial. I think it's literally being weaponized.
Yeah.
By what force?
Yeah.
Some say China. Some say China's actually using Twitter to fucking.
Well, there are lots of people that benefit from us being socially isolated, addicted, dependent, all these things, right? And so, you know, a lot of people have this conception of libertarianism that what we want is every man on an island and there's no interdependence or community. I think it's the exact opposite. I think that a libertarian society is one where people take personal responsibility for their neighbors, their community, the people in it, and they provide love and support and interconnection. So I think a lot of these problems dampen down when you have that kind of community. But given our current environment, and this is kind of a segue into last night, we've all been locked down, we've been socially isolated. Life as we know it has been disrupted to a huge degree. Like in the comedy world, I'm guessing, well, I know they shut down a bunch of comedy clubs here because they didn't want people laughing out COVID all over the place, right? And
I think that's since been eased.
It's been eased
a
bit,
yeah. Yucks in Edmonton is open. In Calgary, some of the clubs are open. The comic strip in the mall is open.
Right.
So.
But I mean, we can't really go to the bar and like put our arm around each other and say, hey,
you gotta walk in wearing a mask.
You gotta walk in wearing a mask. Like it's just, we're all in these little protected bubbles. And so last night was a huge refreshing. I mean, it was a huge boost for my own mental health.
Oh, cool.
For those of you who don't know, we went to a secret location last night, and Mark and a couple other comedians performed in a garage. And there's just a bunch of people there living life, loving it, and connecting and clinking glasses and laughing. Someone on the outside might look at that and say we're being irresponsible or something, but man, I felt such relief just being able to do something like that. So how talk a little bit about that. Like how has this pandemic affected the comedy scene?
Okay, so at first it shut all of comedy down worldwide, right? Because any venue that would have held comedy, comedy clubs, bars, restaurants, things like this, theaters, not allowed to open, right? So that was around, when did it, the mid-March, they sort of locked society down. I'd say end of May in BC anyway, they started lifting restrictions and bars were allowed to open. In BC, stand-up comedy is allowed because there's only one person on stage. As long as the rest of the bar, the patrons are adhering to the social distancing rules. So if you come in as a group, you have to stay together and no intermingling, and you have to be 6 feet, blah, blah, blah. But the performer can be on stage as long as the equipment's thoroughly sanitized in between sets, right? So that was pretty cool. So it was the first time for all comedians in the world since they had that much time off of comedy, because I was telling you before you turned the camera on, normally me and many of my colleagues, my comedy friends, were doing, like, depending on the city you live in, you'll be doing 5 to 20 sets a week. In New York, some guys do like 30, 40 sets a week, right? It's multiples a night, right? So all of a sudden to zero. Right? And okay, so then comedy starts up in Vancouver again. Oddly enough, in BC, of all places, it had some of the most lax rules. Still does. It's actually pretty. There's more stand-up comedy in Vancouver than there is in New York City right now. Right. So anyways, comedy starts up again, and it's okay. Get the rust off, and not as many sets to do, not as many shows. A lot of businesses that used to host comedy are gone, don't even exist anymore, right? And one of the clubs, the Yuck Yucks in Vancouver, can't open because I think it's too expensive for them to operate at the limited capacity. Right. But a bunch of bar shows popped up where it's a lot of comedy. Most comedy happens in bars anyway. It's not really in the club.
Right.
So anyway, it starts up and it's going well. However, comedy, I'll go back a bit. Comedy for the last 10 years got infected by this leftist ideology. Just like everything else, right? Academia, all of it. Comedy's no different, right? So they started running things, these really woke, progressive types, right? And comics have always been, at least since I've been doing comedy, have been the gatekeepers, actually, because especially in Canada, because Canada doesn't have a real industry, so it's all kind of this artist collective kind of thing. So if you run afoul of a comic or a couple comics, especially with content, they can make it so it's really hard to do comedy because you just get black. Because here's the current, they trade in this. If you're a comic and I don't like this guy, I can freeze him out by making it so if I say he's problematic and you don't agree with me, I can make it so you don't do comedy either. That's how they do it, right? So you get, and like I was saying last night at the show, it's not that you get canceled, you get starved out. So before you eat, because if I make it so, I don't need to make a tweet. I could just make it through social pressure that you can't perform comedy. If you can't get on stage anywhere, how the fuck?
You're an up and comer, no one knows you, and no one will ever know you.
Done. That's
you're
it.
done. Your career's over.
So then options you can do are you can produce your own shows, but then it's hard because it's like, do you want to be a producer or do you want to be a comic? And often comics will produce a little bit, but not be full-time producers, right? So anyway, this is what it does. So anyway, enter COVID restrictions and bylaws. So what happened was it crippled the industry of comedy. So all these people I was just describing before, they don't have power anymore because a lot of their venues are shut down and there's nothing, they can't take anything away from anyone. Guess what they do now if they don't like you?
They hunt you down, dox you.
They call up the fucking COVID bylaw people to rat your shows out. Now they actually literally have the power of the state.
Yeah, and that's why we kept this show under wraps, and a mutual friend of ours put it on, and it was awesome. And it's the kind of comedy I don't think I've ever heard in a comedy club before, to be honest with you. Like, it was very politically incorrect. I mean, there was stuff, I think each comedian probably said stuff that would get them locked up by a human rights tribunal.
That's my favorite.
And it was so refreshing.
One day.
I mean, it was just so refreshing to hear, like, just uncensored, like, ridiculous stuff, offensive stuff that you don't realize how much of a muzzle there is on your brain until you hear some of the shocking stuff you guys were saying. So I'm kind of hopeful. Like, this is almost like it feels like we're in an era of like the speakeasies where there's these underground things popping up where there's some real cool shit bubbling up.
I think, at least as far as comedy goes, and I don't want to sound too insensitive because I know people lost their fucking lives over this, but COVID might have helped comedy, at least for guys like me, right? Because it leveled the playing field.
Right.
So now, like you said, speakeasy, like, because it adds a sexy kind of a vibe to it, right?
It felt so taboo and awesome last night. Like, I'm pretty sure I knew it wasn't just that the state didn't like me going there, but I'm pretty sure my wife would hate your comedy.
Right.
And so I felt taboo.
Right.
It was just something.
It just lends it. It gives it a good vibe, right? And so I think. That's what I'm thinking the future might be. It'll be things like that. It'll be kind of guerrilla punk rock, speakeasy, libertarian kind of. We're gonna fuck the system. We're gonna do it ourselves kind of thing. And the only thing I would say is that all we need as artists, I'm speaking to your audience now, is we just need the audience. Because if they're not there, then the show can't happen, right? So, and if you vote with your dollar, or if it's not dollars, if it's support of any kind, then it can happen. Right, so. Right,
there was one weird thing I saw. I wanted to pick your brain about this as an off topic. There was one guy there wearing a mask. So we're in this garage. No one's wearing a mask, but this one guy is wearing a mask. And I thought to myself, why was he wearing a mask? Is he trying to protect us from his COVID, or is he trying to protect himself?
No, just neurotic. Because he even said at one point, I don't even know if I need to wear this or not. He's just kind of going along with the rules. And he doesn't want to get in trouble, and he didn't, so he. That's all it was.
Yeah, okay.
No, he's fine. As far as I know, he's fine, right?
No, I felt like going over to him saying, dude, you can take them out. Like, don't worry about us. We're not worried about catching COVID from you.
Yeah.
We're here, gathered tightly in this garage, belly laughing our COVID out to the air. Like, we are living life. We would rather go out like this than live in our bubble and die a slow fucking death of our spirit or something,
I've been in Edmonton since Tuesday, and in BC you don't have to wear masks. They suggest it, but you don't have to wear it.
Right.
Here you have to when you go into anything, right? I don't fucking like it, man.
No,
I'll be honest. I don't like having to wear it. I really don't like it, man. I didn't wear them for a while because it's like, well, you don't have to, so I'm not going to. But then I thought, maybe if they made me, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Mask for using for armed robberies. That's it, man. Fucking other than that, and even then, I could wear it for less time, and it's. And I was walking around in Safeway, and I'm wearing the mask. Everyone's wearing a mask, and I'm just thinking. Yeah. I don't think this is fucking good, man. This isn't good. This is bad. Like, and it's turning us into this like Blade Runner kind of kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Well, and the thing that I've always wondered is how do we ever go back to normal? Because all the same logic that you apply to mask use now can be applied even when COVID's gone to the flu, right? I mean, the flu kills hundreds of thousands of people each year.
Right.
And I see it every year as a paramedic. The flu sweeps through nursing homes and kills people. I've seen kids die from the flu. I've seen 20-somethings have to have heart transplants because of the flu. So the flu is no joke either. So what's my worry is this is our new normal, because how do you argue against taking precautions for everything?
Right.
Going forward, right? Like, if what we're doing now is saving lives, it would have also saved lives in the past during flu season, and it's going to save lives in the future, even when COVID's gone. And I don't like that. That fucking bugs me, man.
Also, as we know, we could even use something as recent as 9/11. Once governments start taking liberties, with taking liberties, as it were, they generally don't roll them back and go, here you guys go. Sorry about that. Like, you don't have to get searched at the airport anymore.
Well,
like, when was the last time there was any bombs on planes?
Right.
It's been forever, right? Fuck.
Yeah. Well, Milton Friedman said there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program.
Right.
So, it's very hard to repeal these.
You where you really learn how fucked up the government is? Prison.
I'll bet.
Because it's the most unmonitored. It's because it's out of public. The public doesn't see it, and the general public, whether they want to admit it or not, don't really give a fuck what prisons do, as long as they're not escaping and breaking into your house.
Yeah.
Beat them, don't care. Give them stakes. All right, maybe I don't like that, but I don't really give a shit that much, right? See these fucking programs, all nepotism. all cronyism.
Right.
$150,000 budget just to decide on the font of a fucking sign, and just because it's just endless money because no one gives a shit, right?
Yeah.
And you see, and I'm not turning this into a woe is me, hard done by inmate thing, but you can see how, like, because in the Canadian prison system, it's not really that brutal as far as how it's pretty soft, as it were, but you see abuses of authority and the state more in inaction. Yeah.
Right.
You also see what a totalitarian kind of 1984-esque society would look like too, where they're monitoring your communications and stuff like that. And they'll say, like, you'll say something, they'll be like, that's not part of your correctional plan.
Right.
And then now your release could be delayed and shit like that, and they get you. Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, I can imagine you draw a lot of parallels to that and what you're seeing in cancel culture right now.
That's exactly what. Dude, one of the reasons I'm dedicated to everything I do, comedy, podcasting, talking about free speech, is because I know what it's like to have your fucking speech taken away.
Right.
Your freedom of movement, freedom of association, all these things. But I earned and I'm not even saying I shouldn't have had that shit taken away. That's I should have been removed from society, but I earned my way back into a free society.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to take it for granted.
Yeah.
And because I've seen, not that I'm the oracle or anything like that or an expert, but because I've seen what it looks like to have all that shit taken away, I want to do my best to be like, hey guys, like, this ain't a good way to go. Like, if it goes to the way I used to live, and you don't want to sign up to that. You know what I mean? You don't want to voluntarily go into prison. I did that once. I don't fucking recommend it.
Yeah. So, just switching gears a little bit, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about comedy and your process. I always had this fantasy about doing stand-up, and it's probably just fantasy. Maybe I'll do an open mic one night. I did a roast battle with Brett Forte once, which was fun, and I enjoyed getting laughs, and you know, what is the process like? Like everywhere, I listen to other comedian podcasts. You got to put in 10 years of grinding before you hit anything. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. So you basically do 5 to 20 sets a week.
Yeah.
Until you die or quit or commit suicide or fucking something happens. That's and even if you do it for 10 years, no guarantee anything's gonna happen. Also, pre-COVID, the system was changing anyway because of the internet. Post-COVID, who knows what the fucking system? Back to the speakeasy thing, it might just be shit like that from now on, right? Like, it might be very difficult to make a living off of stand-up comedy now.
Right.
No, I never was, just so you know. Like, I wasn't even close to making a living. It's hard to do that in Canada at the best of times. And then if you're a guy like me, it fucking ain't happening. But you probably now, if you were going to do comedy, like, there's open mics and stuff you could do, but it's pretty much just do it as much as you can. Yeah. And eventually you get good at it or quit. Right. So.
And do you spend like time writing every day? Is it
like
a discipline?
I'm not that structured about it. It's more like my mind is a hyperactive thing, and it's just kind of constantly going. And then while I'm thinking, well, okay, I got to get a coffee, get something to eat, and then go to gotta record this podcast and message this guy about this joke. And then I go catch the joke and write it down. Yeah, that's kind of how.
And how do you write it down? Do you have a pad? Or
on my phone.
On your phone?
On a notepad. And then what I do is once it's on there, I'll either flesh it out. Some jokes come pretty well ready to go. Yeah. Some of them it's just the idea, and then I got to kind of work it out. Sometimes the punchline only comes to me. Sometimes the premise comes to me, and then I'm like, oh, there's something there. Yeah. Or then if it's the punchline only, I'm like, okay, that's funny, but how do I get there? Then I have to reverse engineer the premise around.
And how often? I'm guessing then once you have that, you try it in a set, see how the audience reacts, and kind of
over and over. Yeah. And then so when you tell a joke in front of an audience, that's why I have to do 5 to 20 sets a week, because you're refining everything. Right. Most of comedy is actually not the writing; it's the getting used to performing in front of people and learning the nuance. It's kind of like martial arts; is you're learning how to.
There's an ebb and flow and energy and time.
Yeah, and that's why it's so hard to teach, because you just keep on doing it, and eventually you learn. Unconsciously, I can't explain, but you kind of learn who you are in a group, right? And then you learn because you're so. It's like fucking Zen chi shit, right? And then you're just so aware of yourself. You know how to manipulate the crowd. Yeah. Not manipulate. Yeah, manipulate. Yeah, fuck it. For sure. And it's basically public speaking crossed with group psychology crossed with temporary cult leader.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so yeah.
No, actually, and you were a master last night. I noticed that, like, crowd work, right? Like there was like unpredictable things happening in the crowd, and you were like finding ways to spin them into humor while controlling the audience.
Except the two white broads.
Yeah, there was a lesbian couple there that was kind of difficult.
They were fun, but just Jesus Christ, they never shut up, man. Because usually what happens is 9 out of 10 times if they beak off a little bit, you make some jokes and they go okay, like because they don't want to be the center.
Right.
They're getting embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
Or they also start feeling self-conscious because they know that, like, okay, oops, we're disrupting. But you get a certain level of drunk, a certain level of white, and you combine them, and then it's like they're just autistic and narcissistic, and
and it's almost like they double down on it. It's like,
I'm part of the show now, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but it was fine. One of the reasons I got good at crowd work is because of the style of comedy I do. I trigger reactions a lot, right? Not necessarily outrage, but people go ho ho ho, and so I found sometimes mad, sometimes something, a comment or something, and I found, okay, this is going to be a theme. I better learn how to deal with that, because if there's too many reactions and you don't deal with it, you lose control of the crowd, right? So I'd learn how to do that. Also, it makes it more fun. And lastly, when you're interacting with the crowd and you're making it fun, it actually, so no matter how horrible of a thing I might say, it kind of reminds them that, hey, this is a show, I'm a human, you're a human, we're kind of at a party and I'm just fucking around right now.
Yeah, I noticed
it removes this sort of performance aspect from it,
Right.
which oddly enough, you'd think, most people think, well, it's comedy, it's a performance. Don't they know it's a performance? Comedy's a funny thing psychologically because we're talking with no set, no instruments, they forget that it's a performance and they start thinking that
it's a conversation.
He actually believes what he just said.
And I noticed you have this kind of style, like your jokes are very shocking, right? And you get different, like some people are like laughing like guiltily, like I shouldn't be laughing at this, but it's so fucking funny. And
I call those rape laughs. They got it without their consent.
And other people are just kind of covering their mouths, like, I can't believe you just said that. But you kind of pause afterwards and you scan the audience and you're looking at it, and it's kind of like it exudes like a sort of confidence, but like you don't feel this hurried need to get to your next joke or anything like that. You're like letting it settle into the audience. And like you said, you're picking those people out that are having the different reactions, and you're like, directly addressing their reaction.
It's fun. That's what I love about it. I like doing the type of comedy I do is the type I have the most fun with. I don't think I could do it any other way. But that's the individual journey. As fucking gay as that sounds, but it is. If you're doing a creative outlet, no matter what it is, it's a journey of self-discovery. Here I'm doubling down on the gayness. But you know what I mean? Because if you were to start doing comedy, you're doing the product you're selling is Tim Moen comedy, not Mark Hughes comedy. So you have to figure out what you're.
And is it ever like? I think there's some comedians out there, maybe some even successful ones that kind of. I'm thinking more maybe of 80s comics or something like that, where you can tell they're kind of like trying to figure out what the crowd would like, and
I'd say a large portion of modern comics are like that. Most at the beginning of when we started talking on camera here, you're like, comics come from dysfunction. Not anymore. They're mostly nerd, like loser theater kids. Like they should be doing improv. They shouldn't be doing stand up. They're not the weirdos that you'd think. Like Stanhope, obviously. We've chatted about that. Most comics aren't like that. They're like John Mulaney. That's most comics, right? Guys like Stanhope these days are more of an anomaly. Which is why comedy's sort of in the state that it's in.
But there seems to be a huge thirst for that kind of authentic stuff. So when you're writing, you're not even really considering the audience so much.
Only how do I make it? So let's just say I'm talking about rape, right?
Of course.
Yeah. My favorite. You can't. The joke is you have to palatable Palatable isn't quite the word, it's more processable. Processable and funny. So I might have a raw concept,
Right.
and the only thing I'm taking into consideration is
How do you communicate?
how do I communicate this in a way you laugh rather than
Right,
get
right.
stuck at the concept,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And that's actually, it's not as hard as you might think, right? Because
Right.
it's a skill, and I don't think anyone can do it. That's what makes me a comedian. Because you ever notice most people aren't funny?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where that comes from in me. I don't know where it comes from in you. I don't know but it's just that thing you got, right? And then you just kind of finesse it in such a way, but I'm not going, oh geez, they might not like this. It's more, how do I get them to like it?
Right.
This is my idea.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me.
It's hilarious to me. How do I make it hilarious to you? And I'm not fundamentally changing it, but what do I got to do to make it hilarious to you, right? So.
Yeah, and I
sometimes it's not though. Sometimes it just ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna work. It's
Yeah.
only ever gonna be funny to you. And
or you can pull them out for certain. Okay, last night, for example, there's a bunch of jokes I did that I might not do at all shows. Right. But I knew, okay, I can do them here.
This is
right.
crowd. Yeah, and that's kind of I look at communicating. I've got a very off-putting message to some politically, right? And so I have to think, okay, I know this is something that people can get, but different people, depending on the audience, I'm going to have to massage this and tailor this so that they can understand.
But only to a certain point. There does come a point where you're like, okay, any more is pandering.
Yeah,
right.
And that's a fine line too.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot of crossover here into politics because you go to let's say a union crowd, right?
Yeah.
Like very pro-union. There are some things I can say that about labor from a libertarian perspective, but if I go too far and you start to sacrifice your principles to get their approval, that's where, okay, you're trying to not sacrifice any principle at all. You want them to come to you. You want them to bend. You can't bend, but you need, in order to get them to bend, you have to be so attractive that they're going to bend for you.
Right.
And that's the secret sauce in the communication, I think so.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, and also I think it comes within you as a guy who has an unpopular message for some people. There does come a point, I'm assuming, because this is what I'm like with comedy is, and a lot of comics aren't like this, is here's the fucking joke, that's all I got. If you don't like it, oh well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
That's all I got, man.
Yeah.
You can't do comedy anymore. Okay, fine. I'll knit. I don't give a shit. I'm not.
And I have to admit, I'm becoming a little bit more that way. I used to really try to craft things and try to consider how people, but then I realized, for me, it was just blunt, direct communication, like get to the point and don't try to flower it up or anything like that.
Yeah.
And just tell me like the straight goods.
Yeah.
And that works for me. And it's going to turn a lot of people off, but it's all about, okay, I'm going to hit the audience. It's like triage. There are certain people this will resonate with, and I just need to focus on that. Because if I spend time trying to focus on people that I might be able to bring over, but they're going to take like a year of work and a year, that I'm wasting my time when I could be getting all this.
What I want as a comedian these days is I just want true fans. Right. So the ones who are like, yeah, you're okay, but like they don't spend any money, they don't come to shows, they won't share anything of mine on Facebook.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Don't really care about you though. I want the ones who are 100% offended or don't like it. Why even focus on them at all?
Right, exactly.
They're irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
So I just want the ones who are like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
So,
good point.
Yeah.
So you've got this history of like drug addiction and criminality. I'm assuming you come from kind of a dysfunctional environment, or
yeah, I come from what I call middle class fucked up.
Right.
So my family had they were okay financially, not like super rich, but okay, right?
Yeah.
2 cars, not decent part of town in Vancouver, but fuck, my parents were fucked up, man. Like it was because they both came from really fucked up homes and had some problems, and they got educated, worked their way out of it. Both poor, but then, but that doesn't solve that just because you have more money than your parents doesn't mean you're a better parent.
Right. Yeah.
Right. There's more
Absolutely.
work to be done, right? And money doesn't fix problems. And unfortunately, my parents thought, well, we'll just buy them Nintendos and that'll, and us calling them names and stuff like that doesn't matter. Like my mom, I don't want to shit talk my parents too much because I've worked very hard to like mend the relationship as best we can. And I'm an adult now, fuck who gives a shit, but like, my mom used to call me a faggot, and my dad pit my dad against me and say, I'm divorcing you unless you do. Like shit, just really crazy shit, right? They didn't hit me or molest me, but some of the other shit was really fucked up, right? So.
And I'm guessing that, so do you think that plays a role in the kind of material you do
Probably.
as a comic? And
Yeah,
have you ever thought about that? Or
the thing is, yeah, probably. It's you're shaped, your perceptions are shaped by your environment and whatnot. So all this like trauma, abuse, dereliction, all this probably would make my sensitivities and sensibilities different. However, a lot of my jokes, people who came from very normal upbringings find funny too, though. So you know what I mean? Yeah.
No, it seemed, and maybe this is just me.
Maybe they couldn't make that joke, but they can laugh at it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, the reason I asked is it seems like you go to some dark places in your jokes, right, and then you resolve them with laughter or something like that. It seems almost like some kind of cathartic. I don't know. Almost like you're taking this super dark energy that's in there and you're controlling it and you're turning it into something beautiful. You know what I mean?
It's basically taking agency over it, right? So
exactly.
There's the trauma is in the brain. It's rewired my brain. I've done my best with therapy and all that to get over it, but it's there, right? So humor is one way that people can sort of some people say it's like rewriting the narrative. I don't think it fully rewrites it, because it's like I tell the joke, you laugh, we all have a good time, but it's still there. It's not gone. But it no longer has how do I put it? If I'm laughing about it and I can make it funny,
it doesn't have power over you.
Yeah, it's not a thing. Like so I was sexually abused, right? Multiple times. I mean, look at me, who wouldn't? Okay, yeah, it happened, and I just made a joke about it now, and it's almost not to prove, but it's a way of saying, yeah, it happened, but it doesn't define me, it doesn't control me, it's just an incident in my life, right? Sometimes I joke about harsh shit to communicate to other people that I am not the sum of my trauma.
Yeah, okay.
Like, because I was sexually abused. Oh, you did, fuck off, man. Yeah, like, I dealt with it, it's over. Like, I was a kid and I'm fine now.
Yeah.
Well, fine, but yeah.
So, what got you into comedy? What was the attraction, or why'd you go
So, when I got out of prison, my first 6 or 7 years were spent just getting my shit together. So, I got out in 2007 and just learning how to be a law-abiding citizen who doesn't do crime or drugs anymore, right? That took up all my fucking energy. And women. And then once I got fairly stable, job, place to live, I got the hang of this law-abiding citizen thing. I was like, fuck, this is kind of boring, man. I needed something to do. Like, I didn't have any hobbies. I'm not a sports guy. I didn't have interests. So I tried all kinds of different stuff. I tried volunteering. A friend of mine did concert promotions. I helped with that. I tried just all this kind of stuff. And I used to write jokes on Facebook, and people used to say, oh, you're so funny, you should try stand-up. And I never wanted to be a stand-up. I didn't even know much about it, right? So I took a stand-up class in 2013. Here I am.
Wow.
No, you don't need to take a class, by the way.
No?
They're a bit of a scam.
Are they?
Yeah. I'll say this, I paid $200 for the class. It was a $200 insurance policy against chickening out. That's what it was good for. Yeah, because if it had just been like, well, just go to an open mic, probably never would have gone.
Yeah, fair enough. So you did the stand-up class, and then you started going to open mics and
and then hitting it, and then after about 6 months of doing comedy, I'm like, okay, I think this is for me.
Right.
Yeah, and because I started getting, it was the first thing I ever did where I put effort in, and I was disciplined about, and then I noticed improvement.
Yeah.
I've never been good at anything.
Right.
Even after putting time and effort into it before and being like, okay, practice, I'd never gotten good at anything.
Right.
And this was the first thing where I noticed in 6 months a marked improvement.
Right.
Doesn't mean I was all of a sudden killing it, but I was like, I used to suck.
Yeah.
And now I suck a bit less.
You can see appreciable results there.
Yeah.
And so you were never like a class clown or anything like that?
I was never the funny guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me clarify one thing. I did discover that I was funny when I went to 12-step meetings and spoke. As a public, apparently I guess I'm a naturally gifted public speaker.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea, right?
Yeah,
and then I make jokes and people would laugh. So combine that with the Facebook and the sharing at meetings and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So where do you see kind of the future of comedy going? We kind of touched on this a little bit with these kind of underground things popping up here and there. It seems to me like there's kind of a growing backlash or swell against this politically correct thing.
Yeah. Okay, so industry ain't going anywhere. Netflix and shit like that still kind of controls the mass media of it. If I had a fucking genie and I'd say what I would wish is that somehow we can transmit to the general public get comedy like I do, or not just me, anyone that bypasses that system, so it's not like they think of comedy and what's on Netflix.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to sound like a smug cunt, but people will kind of just consume whatever you put in front of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wish they'd maybe put a bit more effort into like looking for stuff that's not just, what's on Netflix? Because it's like, Netflix doesn't have your fucking best interest at heart, man. They really fucking don't, right? And I don't even want to sound hard done, never mind me. There's tons of comics that will never get, not even because of content, but they didn't know the right person or they didn't network or whatever. And things like Netflix will never give them a thing. And then they go off into obscurity, and you would have loved them more than anything that's on Netflix. Right. Again, nothing to do with transgressive, edgy, or anything, right? So
yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I guess in one could say that, you know, in the past there was like 3 networks that can kind of controlled everything. Now it seems like there's a lot more platforms, but again,
they're tightening too, though, like because big tech, the social media platforms are basically turning into network TV. Right. Because I don't know if you've heard, they want more advertisers now, because their model wasn't really making them money, so now they want more advertisers. So in order to make themselves attractive to advertisers, they want big channels and safe.
Right.
So.
And then they put on this show, Cuties. You see this?
Jesus Christ, man.
It's fucking weird. Yeah.
At least people. One thing I do notice about that Cuties though is a lot of people are criticizing it.
Yes.
So that's a good sign.
No, that's a good sign. Yeah. I mean, it does seem like, you know, and I made this point a lot over the last couple of months, that there are certain corporations, certainly the media corporations, have blossomed during this pandemic, right?
Yes.
It's and there's like this huge, you know, we're printing money like there's no tomorrow. The biggest corporations that are most well connected to government, and that's definitely tech and media, they essentially have like an oligopoly. Like smaller companies can't cross the threshold to beat them because of the government regulations and hurdles they put up. But it seems like there's this power transfer and wealth transfer from the lower classes and the least powerful and the small businesses and the medium businesses to these mega corps that are starting to control everything, right? And so, yeah, that worries me a little bit. But the spirit I saw last night kind of gives me
I think if more people can do stuff like that, again, regardless of content, just take control of it. Try and get to the people somehow. People would say, well, build your own fan base online. Fuck, that's starting to go the way of the dodo bird now too, though, because it's like YouTube.
Just saturated.
It's saturated. Also, they control, the algorithms are designed to suppress, not even just content. If you're not very big, they don't really want you to get very big, because they want to make the bigger ones bigger. Right. Because then then they just channel all the advertisers there, right? So it's going to be tough to kind of reach the people. Yeah. But I think for people to do anything like what I do, or the equivalent, even if it's not comedy, there's lots of equivalents to it, is if we can just somehow reach our market, our consumers, our patrons, our fans, and just try and deal with them on a way where, okay, we probably have to accept we're not going to get rich doing it. Yeah. Just that's fucking over. That ain't happening. But if you could at least have value put on what you do, and what I always say on my podcast is with what I do, I want value put on it. That doesn't necessarily mean cash. Cash is nice. It's easy. But some kind of value, even if it's like, hey Mark, can you come perform? We can't give you money, but we can buy you food. We can just something, right? We can send your. We can give you an email list. We can something, right?
Yeah.
And I think if people can do that, then it will thrive.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it bypasses all the fucking bullshit, right?
Yeah, and I think I'm starting to see a growing demand for it. In one area where I'm really seeing this is in public schools, for example, right? Like I saw this tweet today from a mother who said her 7-year-old was sent home from school because she sneezed.
Right.
And now she has 2 weeks off school and she has to come back with a negative COVID test to get back into school, right?
Right.
Well, this is just a license for kids to get out of school,
Right.
for sure. I mean, who wouldn't sneeze and just get a 2-week vacation? But there's so much nuttiness in public schools now that it's made me think, well, maybe there's an opportunity here to create something, outside the box, like some kind of homeschool co-op or like some alternate education alternatives for parents. I bet you there's going to be a huge demand for that. And just like that, I think that with this growing monopolization and sanitization and corporatization of entertainment, I think what I'm starting to see is a growing demand for things like last night. It also made me think, man, we ought to do, maybe the Libertarian Party ought to host a bunch of like underground comedy performances across
It's kind of
Canada.
in the vein of what you guys,
Yeah, just like,
the only tricky part, or not tricky, potentially depressing part about this growing demand for these different things, or comedy, teaching, whatever you're talking about, is the government or the elite gonna pull some bullshit where like they outlaw money, they monitor all your fucking bank accounts, so it's like they make it so you can't, like it's literally illegal to do any of, like, because that's what I've heard is one of the reasons they're making everything so Interac and credit card is so they can monitor your finances more, right? And I'm just like, for fuck's sakes, man.
yeah, for sure.
Then the chip.
But I mean,
They don't need a chip.
The thing that gives me some hope, and maybe, because normally I'm kind of a black pill kind of guy, like things are going to hell and there's nothing we can do. But lately I've been trying to.
I don't think it. I think it's maybe going to help.
Right.
I think we can stop it though.
Yeah, and I think there's we've got cryptocurrencies, right? The government hasn't seemed to be able to crack down on those. So as fast as that's the problem with big government, is that they're a lot slower than all these people out here coming up with innovations and innovating on innovations, and like that signal is just so fast that I think eventually a lot of these things are going to be irrelevant. Like okay, you're telling me I gotta have a monitored bank account. Well, why? I'm just going to switch to a Bitcoin wallet and get paid through Bitcoin or something like that, or maybe even just gold, or like. How are you going to stop me from doing? Like, there's so many options for me to have personal power that you're closing off one small thing that used to be a big thing, but it's not that big anymore because all this technology.
That's a good point.
That's available. Like even homeschool teaching, internet, like that kind of stuff. In order to produce like a homeschool curriculum or network of co-ops or something like that, it would have been a huge undertaking even 20 years ago. And now it seems like it can happen a lot faster. Everything can be online, and there can be stuff developed very quickly through a network. It can be decentralized. It can even be encrypted if we don't want the government to get their stinky paws on it. So that's the white pill. That's the optimist in me. And normally I'm the pessimist. Normally I'm the one. But because you were a little bit cynical,
well, thank you.
Optimism.
Yeah, well, no problem.
Anyways,
Speaking of stinky paws, just hold on 1 second.
Okay. Oh, you got a stinky paw?
I like showing them off.
I wonder what this is going to be.
Stinky paws.
Oh shit!
These are my ferrets. So this is puppy, and that's baby.
Puppy and baby.
Yeah, I gotta keep them locked up though because there's a hole in the wall. Like when this coffee table actually has to get pushed up against the fridge. You guys can't see it, and the cupboard because they can get underneath and then go right into the walls of the house.
Shit.
So,
And hang out there. Oh, look at these guys.
Yeah.
You know,
They come with, if I ever do road trips, they come with me. So.
they remind me a little bit of the weasels I used to trap as a kid. I used to trap and skin weasels.
Well, they're related, same
Yeah.
family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, you guys were deep sleeping. Holy shit,
Oh,
I'm an
man.
asshole.
Yeah. Ferrets, nice. So you take those guys wherever you go? Or?
If I don't get on a plane, if I can do it by road, I take them with me.
Nice.
They won't, fucking bullshit planes. They'll allow dogs, cats, guinea pigs, rabbits, but they won't let fucking ferrets.
Brutal.
Yeah, fucking elite.
Unbelievable.
Illuminati again.
Illuminati fucking hates
The patriarchy.
You know why? It's probably because I think ferrets eat reptiles, right?
They eat, well, these guys just eat
The
cats.
reptilians don't like that, but
Yeah. Oh, right, yeah, fuck, yeah, that's right, yeah, they eat lizards.
yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, there we go.
Mark, thank you so much for
Thanks, Tim.
fighting for free speech, for making us belly laugh, for coming to garages in the middle of nowhere, Alberta.
Yeah, no problem, man.
We appreciate it.
I like Alberta. I don't give a shit what anyone says. In Vancouver, you're supposed to shit on Alberta.
Yeah.
Vancouver's fucking gay, man.
Right. So if anyone out there in my audience, any Albertans or otherwise, want to get a hold of you and book one of these underground comedy shows or just support you somehow, what can they do?
I'm easy to find on any social media. So at Mark Hughes Comic usually will come up somewhere on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. MarkHughesComedy.com.
MarkHughesComedy.com. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, and I'm a big fan. I hope to see more of these shows. Hopefully, maybe even the Libertarian Party will put on some shows, and we'll start a traveling road show. I've already talked to Brett Forte a little bit and said we got to do some more comedy stuff because I think that comedy is one of the best ways to challenge power.
Right.
And you do that in spades. And when you get hauled before a human rights tribunal, which is inevitable, I got you back.
I'm next.
I got you back.
Okay, bud. Thanks.